Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Darmody, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a Scratch Make It Fly game. So this tutorial will help you to create your own. I have already added in the 3 sprites because you will need 3 sprites and 1 backdrop. I've added in a bat. The bat's going to be chasing the mouse, so that's part of the game. And then we have a building sprite that I added in for scenery. And this is going to be scrolling scenery, so that's why I had to make it a sprite, because backdrops cannot move. So if you want scenery that looks like it's scrolling by, you need to use a sprite. So I have that. So let's begin. So first of all, I have my bat, and I need to make some decisions about him. But let me switch over to the coordinate plane backdrop, because that will help explain a few things. We won't use that during the game, just for this. So we want to make sure the bat is placed in a certain position. So I'm going to choose my green flag and bring that over. And I think I want the bat to be up here to start. So I'm going to go to my motion blocks and I'm going to use the go to. And notice that the XY coordinates in the go to block match exactly where I just dragged that bat to on the screen. So you don't need to memorize numbers. And then the other thing we have to be careful about is right now if I move that building over near the bat, it covers it up. So we want to make sure that the bat is always in the front of the layers and not in the back. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to choose go to the front layer, and that way he'll always be in the front. And then under looks, he's also going to speak because he's going to chase that mouse. I will get you, mouse. Okay, so let's test it out. So far, so good. While we're at it, we do want to make sure that that building is not ever in the front of the other characters. So we're going to have it go to the back before I forget to put in that particular code. So we're going to make sure it goes to the back right at the beginning of the program. Okay, so back to this. So we want the bat has costumes, so we want him to be flapping his wings with his costume changes along the way. And we want that to happen at the exact same time as the other code that we have in this script. So we need to create what's called a parallel script, meaning that there are 2 scripts going on at the same time. Because if we put the costume change at the bottom of this script, all of these things have to happen first before that costume change will ever take place. So we need to go over here and we're going to choose next costume. We want those costume changes to happen throughout the entire game. So we're going to use our forever loop and connect that. Now let's see how that works. Now that flapping is a bit much, so we're going to use our wait block to have a pause in the costume changes, just a slight pause of 0.1. Now that's much more reasonable with his flapping of the wings. I'm sure that will keep him flying. So now we've got that. So we've got the costume changes of the bat going on throughout the entire game, and then in the very beginning he goes to his special location, which we will test that out. And he goes right there and he starts talking. But he needs to move as well because he's going to be chasing that mouse. So we want him to move, and I think we're going to try having him move with the arrow keys. So we need to choose an arrow key, but this says space, but of course there's a drop down. So when we have the up arrow, and remember the up arrow would be a positive change in Y, so we want to go to the motion, and we want to say change the Y by a positive 10. So let's test that out. Sure enough, he goes up by positive 10. Now I can duplicate that script and just make a slight change to make it a down arrow this time. And with a down arrow, of course, it's going to be a negative 10 because the Y axis goes downward to have a negative 10. Now we need to have the left and right arrows as well. So I'm going to choose that block again and the right arrow, and we're going to change X by, change X by 10. And again, we can duplicate that script to save us some time and use the, oops, right arrow. Yeah, up arrow, down arrow, right arrow. This one will be left arrow. And to make him go left, it would be a -10 because of course the X value is going that way or negative. So now if we try out as we go, we've got our up, we've got our down, right arrow to go right, left arrow to go left. And what I want to point out to you that's really important is you always should test your scripts as you build them. So as you build your scripts, you want to test as you go. So that way you'll discover any errors immediately and you can troubleshoot it. Or as in computer science, you want to debug it and then fix the errors as you go. Don't wait till the end until you've created all your scripts. And then when you play it, if there's an error, it'll be much more difficult to figure out where that error is because you already have your scripts all created. So I think we're all set with the bat for now. So now let's go to the building and we need to figure out how that building's going to move. And we want the building to start out way over here to the right. Actually a little further over than that even. So we want to be on the edge of the scene over here and then gradually move across that screen, that stage I should say. So we want to set that X to 250 in the beginning because we want it to start right at the edge. There it is. Let's move this down just a little bit. Okay, so that's starting right at the edge, and then we want to look like it's moving across the screen, so that would be a negative change in the X value. Now, obviously, we want that to happen more than once. So to have that happen several times, we need to use our repeat. And probably repeat this, let's see. So if we have this repeated 10 times, it's not doing very much. So we probably need to have that happen a bunch of times. Let's try this first. So we set the X to 250, then we have this repeat. Okay, that's not enough. So maybe let's try 100. So it does move across the screen. All right, so 100 times repeating -5 will get it completely across the stage. And then we set it in the beginning to 250, but we don't want that to happen just once. So we do need to use our forever loop to make sure that that happens. We don't need to set to the back over and over again, only once. So when we do this, it goes across once, but then it keeps on going back to the 250 at the very right edge of the stage and then changing that -5 over and over again to get across. But it's got costumes too. So it would be more interesting, obviously, to change the building costume. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to choose next costume and maybe right here. So we're setting the 250 at the edge, the right edge of the stage. It's going to change its costume. Then it's going to repeatedly change X by -5 to get right across the stage. Yeah, I think that'll work just fine. All right, so now we want to go to the mouse. So the mouse needs to have some movement, clearly. Otherwise, how would we have a game? So the mouse, where do we want to start? So we have the bat starting his position way over here. So we probably want to have the mouse start probably the opposite side of the screen. So we're going to set his position initially to be X equals 250, which is kind of similar to the building. So set X to 250. Okay, but then we want him to move in a coordinated way. So if we want, well, coordinated but random, because if his movement is too predictable, then the game is not challenging, and then nobody would really want to play your game. So you have to make it somewhat challenging. So let's have him go to a random position. So we'll set it to 250, but then he goes to a random position. Oh, he's got to do more than that. All right. So we set it, but then let's have him move this way because he started out way over here on the right side of the screen at 250. Let's have him move gradually across the screen in a similar fashion to what happens with the building. But it's not going to be as predictable as the building because we have the random thing in there. Okay, well, we need that to happen more than once, obviously. So let's have this repeat a few times as far as the change in the x value. Let's try 30. Okay, we still need more. So we still need to have some foreverness in there because he is not moving enough. I'm not sure that's quite right either. So let's try this. Is that random enough? Now that's way too crazy. Let's try this. No, that's not good. So we're going to try random position in 250. And let's see how that goes. Is that random enough to make the game fun to play? I think so. I think so. I think that'll work. Okay, so now we need to go. So the last part is we know how to make sure that we know something's going to happen when the bat touches the mouse. Okay, so if we need to do that, let's go. We want to click on the bat because we want that code on the bat. We're going to go to variables. We're going to create a variable. So make a variable. We're going to call it score. So we call it score. You can call it anything you want, but that's what I'll use for this one. So now we need to set the variable to 0. Don't leave it my variable because that's just the generic default. So you need to click on that down arrow and select the variable you just created. Set it to 0. And when are you going to set it to 0? Obviously at the beginning, when the green flag is clicked. Now you want to detect when the bat is touching the mouse. So when is the bat touching the mouse? So we need to teach it to do that when the bat is touching the mouse. But how does it know? If then is your friend. So if then, and we put the when it's touching the mouse. So if it's touching the mouse, then what's going to happen? Well, we want something to happen. We want the score to go up. So go back to the variables, change the score. Remember, you don't leave it at my variable by 1. But you don't want to only check for that condition once. It needs to check for that condition over and over and over again forever, because otherwise it won't work. So you want to set the score to 0. If the bat is touching the mouse, then the score changes by 1. But you need to give the mouse time to get away. So we're going to put a wait block in there before, so it gives the mouse a chance to get away before the bat can capture it again and touch it again. So now let's switch the backdrop to the blue sky because that's the one we wanted originally anyway. And now let's play our game. Up and down, left and right. I'm capturing that mouse. It's a little more interesting because the buildings are changing their costumes. Now you can add more things to this. You could have more scenery, like adding in clouds and have those clouds glide across the screen and change costumes. You could add another type of variable to detect when maybe when the bat touches the buildings, he'd lose points, perhaps. That would be another advanced option, but I think you're all set to go.